What up, Cagesiders? It's your boy Sean. I got Geno with me. We're addicted to this podcasting thing lately. I don't know what to tell you. And we got connections. And so today,
We
our
really
good
don't.
friend, what's that?
We really don't have connections.
Well, we do. Well, it depends on, and maybe Court can tell us how much we should value our connection to Greeny. So our friend Alex Greenfield introduced us to Court Bauer on the interwebs, and Court also wrote for WWE for a while, same as Alex Greenfield did, and is now doing some pretty cool stuff with Mexico's AAA promotion, which a lot of Cagesiders are getting sort of introduced to via Lucha Underground these days. But they're going to have a live, well, of course it's live. They're going to have an English language pay-per-view next Sunday of TripleMania, which is basically their WrestleMania event. It's going to have some familiar faces on there. Alberto El Patron, who we used to know as Del Rio. Miss Disease, one of the things I'm going to ask Court is how the hell to pronounce that. He was Sin Cara in WWE, the original one. He was Mystico, his first runs through Mexico. Rey Mysterio will be on this card, so it's pretty exciting, and it's a good deal. And so we're going to watch it. We're going to cover it at Cageside, and we wanted to chat with Court about his career and what he's got going on there. So welcome, Mr. Bauer.
Hey, it's good to be here with you guys. Never done one of these before.
Us either. Just kidding. So I was looking. So you, as your background, I mean, you started MLW as a promotion and then went to WWE. Do I have the chronology right there?
Is he muted?
Did I mute him?
I think he muted.
Hello?
There we go.
Hello? There you go.
All right, my
Yeah,
bad.
no problem. No, I started in wrestling in the late '90s under the Wild Samoans, Afa, Samu, that whole family broke me into wrestling. So I started with them in Allentown while in college, and that opened up other doors, including to help briefly with All Japan Pro Wrestling because the late great Gary Albright was the son-in-law of Afa. So originally MLW was going to be kind of like a satellite system to find American and Canadian talent for All Japan Pro Wrestling, and then that didn't work out because Baba passed away, and then Gary Albright passed away in the ring, actually, in early 2000s. So then I put MLW on the back burner, finished up college, and on the flip side, you had the scorched earth kind of effect in wrestling where WCW was no longer there, ECW was no longer there. My goal was to work in some capacity in the office of a company like an ECW, and that was no longer an option. So circled back to MLW, kind of recalibrated what it was, and then we ran for 2 years and had guys like Terry Funk, guys like CM Punk versus Vampiro on the show, Raven. Daniel Bryan wrestled for us. Harry Smith, who was 18 years old, along with Tyson Kidd. They were literally doing cramming for midterms in high school in their senior year while wrestling for me. So we had an eclectic locker room. Guys like Dr. Death, Steve Williams, the Sandman, just a real weird mix of guys. That some guys were, shutting it down and winding down their careers. Other guys were just about to blow up, and the world of wrestling would never be the same. And did that for a few years. We had TV on all the way over in Japan on Gaora TV, and in the UK, and over here on Sun Sports TV and on Fox Sports Atlantic. So we had good TV for an upstart company. I was 22 at the time, and then went on to WWE, which is like nothing. I can't compare it to anything in wrestling. It was an incredible experience working for almost 3 years for WWE from '05 to mid 2007.
Cool. So yeah, you've certainly got the background. So I think as we were talking before we got on the air here, I mean, a lot of our fans are WWE centric. It's the major leagues for good and for bad. So compare and contrast. I guess your experience. You said there's nothing like it. So
nothing quite like it. I mean, Vince McMahon, in wrestling, the culture typically is a pretty disorganized kind of vibe, but Vince holds everyone accountable. He's ruthlessly efficient with how he runs his operation, so you better be ready. You better anticipate the needs of the company and have your game face on 24/7, 365. There's really no off days when you're working for Vince when you're at that level. You learn a lot. You have to match that ambition, and you have to really just, you're a suggester as a writer and producer, part of that creative process. You're suggesting a million ideas. You're trying to find the most viable ideas for business, for what you think the fans want, but at the same time you're balancing that with what the emperor wants, and you have to be able to read them and yet ride that, kind of like straddle that, what's best for business, but also what Vince wants, without really becoming a yes man, which a lot of people for survival purposes alone will do. Other people, like Greeny's a great example. He gave him what he thought was the best version of the product, and they would go face to face. Almost came to blows a few times on what that concept should be for SmackDown at that point in time. And I really admire people that do that. I try to do the same. Paul Heyman was like Greeny, really trying to fight for what his version of the best version of WWE is. So it's interesting. I think longevity, it's probably better to be a yes man, but to each their own. I mean, it's also what you're looking for out of that gig. If you're looking at it, you want to be a for lifer, or it's you go in there and you realize, okay, I did my tour duty. It's time to move on and find something else.
So it's a political game, so to speak.
It's a bit game of cards. It's a bit tackle football and concrete. It's a bit of everything. I mean, it's like no writer's room in show business. It's like no booking office in wrestling. Having worked for Ring of Honor, now AAA, WWE, my own company, being affiliated with All Japan, I can tell you WWE is like nothing else. Nothing can adequately prepare you for it politically, in terms of going in, what creatively, in terms of booking fundamentals or writing out in Hollywood, and there's no ideal way to prepare for that job other than be quick and nimble to adjust, and being able to read people and read a room. And you walk in a room some days, there's someone that's going to throw a dagger in your back or someone else's back, so you got to be ducking and dodging that too. So it's an incredible experience, and if there was a show that should be on the network, it's that show. It's being in the writer's room, being a part of that, and I think that'd be just some really amazing TV.
There's definitely a within the fan base, and we see it all the time at Cageside Seats. People are there's at least the idea that there are political battles that take place, and it's, this guy's trying to bury this guy, and this guy, they're trying to. How prevalent is that in WWE or even outside WWE?
Well, there's going to always be a component of people that have their own agendas, that have grudges, that for some reason there's some sort of static between these big personalities. Ideally, wrestling should be full of big egos and big personalities, because those guys typically are driven to be successful but also memorable. And because of that, things happen. But it's funny because I'll read online, or back in the day I used to read online, this is happening, we can't understand why this guy is getting buried. And sometimes it was just crummy writing. Sometimes it was the guy really screwed up behind the scenes and needed to be punished. Other times it was a contract that wasn't going to be renewed, and we were starting to wind down on that. Sometimes it was just there's circumstances that you just are so random, and you just can't jump to conclusions on why things happen, either good creative, bad creative. Sometimes it just happens. There's a million reasons in wrestling why some guy just all of a sudden takes a detour, and you're like, wow, what happened? And that guy should be going onward and upward, and all of a sudden he's now a clown.
I guess Kevin Owens, maybe? They're
starting that's the thing.
To bring up his weight on TV, and it's like, I wonder what that's about.
Right. If they're starting to do that kind of stuff, it's probably indicative of how Vince feels about them, because he's feeding the announcers, and that's not an agent, that's not a writer, that's Vince, because the announcers would never otherwise say those things. I mean, I think we got a pretty clean snapshot of what Michael Cole is like without Vince in his ear producing him with the Beast in the East special in July or earlier this month. He was a totally different play-by-play man, and you can tell when they're starting to say those things. It's not that Michael Cole has bad instincts, it's that the chairman wants it to be said for whatever reason. I don't know if this is his way of sending a message to Kevin Owens. I think there's a better way to do it without devaluing a talent or creating issues in terms of how the fans perceive him, not fans that are maybe privy to the inside and inner workings of wrestling. Just a casual fan, all of a sudden you're planting seeds that maybe you don't need to plant that are destructive to what your ultimate cause is.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna, as the head of Cageside, as the leader of the site or whatever, I'll take up the typical. I see Sean smiling like, yeah, of course he's the fucking head.
He's the Vince, and I'm the everybody else.
I like to say you're my Triple H. But I'm
Kevin Dunn.
I'm WWE.
Who's Stephanie?
Sadly, we don't have. I wish we had a Stephanie.
Some nights I'm Stephanie.
All right.
Wow.
So I'm a WWE fan. That's all I watch. But I want to get into other promotions, and I want to get into other things. And I keep hearing about this TripleMania thing that's coming up, and and I don't. But I want to get into it, but I don't know how. How should I go about doing this?
Well, the best thing, we're actually going to drop a special at AAAlucha.com. That's AAAlucha.com this Sunday. That's hosted by Matt Stryker, who's one of the announcers for AAA, along with Hugo Savinovich, who worked for WWE for like 17 years on the Spanish announce team, but speaks great English. It has an authenticity of calling the matches, and they're going to break it down. It's a 15-minute special. They're going to kind of bring everyone up to speed on who's in AAA, what the style is like, the storylines, the rivalries, the characters, the dream match between Rey Mysterio and Mysticis, the former Sin Cara, formerly before that Mystico in Mexico, and Alberto Del Rio has a big conflict with Brian Cage, who some might be familiar with from Lucha Underground. He's like this big powerhouse, like the prototype for what Vince would like, a jacked up big dude. That's obnoxious, but can do like crazy things like backflips off the top rope. Very dynamic, very dynamic. I can't compare him to anyone because usually you see these big guys like Ryback, and you see Ryback over the top rope for an elbow drop, like wow. But imagine a guy holding a guy from the top rope and then doing a backflip, like almost like a Spanish fly, and that's the kind of things Brian Cage can do. So. Really amazing kind of talent there, and then he's feuding with Alberto. He put the American flag on him, beat him up, bloodied him, and then posed with the American flag over Alberto, who was like laying unconscious in the ring. It's a pretty profound image. So this Sunday you'll be able to kind of get up to speed on those kind of rivalries. There's going to be a lot of footage and to kind of tell you what AAA is about. A lot of guys have come through AAA. A lot of guys broke out in wrestling because of their time at AAA. Eddie Guerrero in the mid-'90s came from there. Rey Mysterio originally came from AAA. Chris Jericho had a cup of coffee in AAA. Jake the Snake Roberts lost his hair to Conan in the 90s in AAA. So a lot of American talent, a lot of Hall of Famers have come through there. Jeff Jarrett recently came through. Kurt Angle in the last years wrestled in AAA. So it's like the best kept secret because there are a lot of great matches, a lot of great talent. And I know fans at WWE, they want that big show feel. Whether it's pyro, big entrances, 20,000 people in an arena, good lighting, all those things are in AAA. You'll see entrances with guys like there was an entrance for the Psycho Circus, and they did the guitar where it was like a flame coming out of it as he's playing it. It was crazy. For TripleMania, we're going to have we're doing a partnership with Mission Impossible at Paramount Pictures, and they're going to have part of the set's going to be the Mission Impossible set. So it's a big league feel. 20,000 people in a state-of-the-art arena in Mexico City. It's pretty badass.
Sweet. I like the Mad Max Fury Road, the Psycho Circus intro crossover there.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy visual. I mean, it was a crazy visual in the movie. To see someone in wrestling do it without catching on fire was awesome.
I'm googling that as soon as we're done. So you mentioned Cage, the effing machine from Lucha Underground, and I think a lot of our readers are either hooked on Lucha Underground or they're desperate to watch it somewhere.
It's come around in a big way.
What's the if they know so they know Cage, they saw him they saw him beat the Mac last night at Ultima Lucha. Is that character, is it the same character when they see him at TripleMania next Sunday, or how does how do you guys, is the booking crossover at all? I know or maybe even speak a little bit to AAA's involvement with Lucha Underground.
Yeah, that's you're going to see a lot of those similar guys. Drago will be at TripleMania. If you're familiar with Fenix, he'll be on TripleMania. Sexy Star will be on TripleMania. Angelico and Jack Evans will be on TripleMania. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of the elite Lucha Underground stars, plus a lot of guys that you haven't been given exposure to. Guys like Dynastia, who's amazing. Goya Kong, the daughter of Super Porky, she's really good too. So you're going to see an amazing locker room because, like, this is the same company, like I said, that broke out Eddie Guerrero, all the luchadors from WCW back in the day, Juventud and Psychosis. Now they're getting ready for a new generation, a new wave of luchadors to break out, and they're doing state-of-the-art cutting-edge stuff. So you'll be able to see a lot of those guys, and along with legends like Blue Demon Jr., La Parca, those guys will all be on TripleMania as well.
Is AAA's vision? I mean, is this a move? Is the move to the English language pay-per-view, or is this a step up in trying to compete with WWE? I mean, is that part of the strategy?
Well, AAA's got a major league vibe going for in Mexico. So I mean, this is phase one of trying to do something on a grander scale, and TripleMania is the first phase of that. Like I guess similarly, Marvel, as example, has phase one and phase two and phase three.
Right,
what
right.
they're doing in their cinematic plans. This is phase one, and it's part of phase one for AAA, and we have bigger plans, grander plans that I can't really talk about yet, but we want to do more, and we think there's a big demand. I mean, in the last 18 months, AAA's picked up 3, arguably, of the biggest free agents that are out there in Ray, in Alberto, and then Mystices, who really was a massive star down in Mexico in the 2000s. He broke all types of records, especially in 2006 for Arena Mexico. He would pack in 17,000, 18,000 every Friday night to see him wrestle. Not every month, but every Friday night. And then he went to WWE. He had some bad injuries, and it just almost like it was like a snake-bitten kind of run. And now he's healthy. He's back in his natural environment where the fans know him, and he's like this big star. And so he's really come back. He's bounced back really big down in AAA over the last year. And so for the first time ever, this match with Ray is happening. This is a match that Vince wanted to do at WrestleMania, and his idea was to have everyone wear masks at the stadium. So it was like the biggest collection of people wearing masks or something, like some goofy Guinness Book of World Records thing, but he never was able to pull it off because of various reasons. So AAA's finally putting that match together. So the parallels between Ray and Mystices are really amazing, because you had one guy break out in the 2000s, owned Mexico as the top star. Meanwhile, you had Ray break out in the mid-2000s, winning the WWE title, winning the Royal Rumble, becoming the biggest Latin star in the world. And one was really a revolutionary innovator in lucha in the 90s, then the other one did it in the 2000s. So to see these guys finally in 2005 wrestle, it's pretty cool, because they're both, one's a young dude and Ray's not even 40. So it's really cool to still get this match. It's not like Pacquiao Mayweather, where you waited maybe a little too long and the bloom was off the rose.
For our listeners who may not know, that's a big part of why WWE wanted Sin Cara so bad, was because he was such a big star. But speaking of those guys, that's a really good way to get fans like me, so to speak, to tune in, because we know those guys. And another good way to bridge that is a really hot angle. Now, I don't know that it's an angle, and that's why we're bringing it up. What's going on, and I don't know how much you can say, on Twitter, because El Patron's saying quite a few things about Mystices, and I don't know it's hard to know is it storyline or is it not storyline. I mean, there seems to be some legitimate heat here between these two.
Yeah, they've had a history that goes back a long time, and it's crazy, because I look at it like imagine if Twitter and social media was around when Brett and Shawn Michaels were beefing in the 90s. Could you imagine what we would be getting during that rivalry?
Oh.
This kind of stuff has happened through the years, and now we're in a different time where you can just sit back with some popcorn and read these tweets and say, wow, is this a shoot or is this a work? And it's a different time, a different world, but this kind of stuff's been going on forever, and wrestlers, they at times get sideways with other wrestlers, especially when you're top level stars and you're competitive. And like we talked about, wrestling's full of rivalries, but also there's politics. Also, there's just natural beefs. And I guess what we saw over the weekend was an extension of that. So we'll see what happens.
That's a great set. We'll see. Tune in.
Yeah, tune in. Who knows?
For people who may not know him, that's essentially Alberto El Patron who's tweeting, talking about he's going to beat the shit out of this guy as soon as they see him, and I believe when they'll see each other is at TripleMania. So yeah.
Hey, you couldn't book it better.
Yeah, you could. And the Sin Cara who works in WWE now chimed in himself and supported El Patron, right? And then I think I've already read rumors that he's got himself in trouble for doing so. So yeah.
I mean, that welcome to wrestling. This doesn't happen when people work for IBM. This doesn't happen when even people. You do see this in stuff like the NBA. You do see guys in the UFC kind of go back and forth every now and again. Look at Conor McGregor, right? There are guys that are just like that, are naturally inclined to just call it like they see it, and it creates conflict. And this is one of those things where, as a former promoter, I can tell you I am so relieved to not have to be a promoter or booker anymore, because you do have to put out fires. You do have to manage egos, manage talent, and on top of that, produce an event that's going to be on pay-per-view in Canada and the U.S., and then manage the live event operations, and then work with like Paramount Pictures and do all these things with sponsors. And it's a hard job. It's a 24/7, 365 job, and if you're Vince McMahon or you're Dana White in the UFC, you don't sleep much, and you don't sleep well, because when you wake up, there's going to be at least 1 to 2 issues that you're going to have to deal on first thing, and hope that you can address them. And it's not a glorious job. It's not a glamorous job. People think it is, and that's why there's so many promoters and failed promoters at that. But it's a tough job, and you go to bed with issues, wake up with issues. It's just what you're doing. You're constantly putting out fires, and if you can succeed at that and have some longevity, look out, world. And you can count on one hand how many people in wrestling have been able to effectively do that for more than a 2 or 3 year run, and Vince has been doing it for 40 years. And AAA, they've been around now since '92, and been growing and growing. So you maybe calcify and get more acclimated to dealing with these issues, but it's never a walk in the park. It's never a cakewalk. It's not what you hope to do, but you sometimes wake up and you have things like Alberto and Mystices.
I don't know if it's a work or a shoot, but either way, it's got me interested.
And mission accomplished.
Speaking of which, with WWE having gone, they're working their hardest to get rid of pay-per-view altogether, and they don't. The idea is when they did their financials today, and they don't account for pay-per-view at all anymore, and they're trying to get out of that business. And now you're breaking into that business, at least in the United States. What would be a success? What would it take for this show to be considered a success on pay-per-view?
Well, here's the thing. They have a satellite truck that's beaming this feed throughout Mexico already. All we're doing here in the States is taking the coordinates for that feed and just hitting the pay-per-view vendors and airing it live. So there's virtually no risk associated with this venture. It's not like another company where they have to sink in a ton of money for an elaborate entrance or spruced up lighting or a satellite truck, which can be very cost prohibitive. They have all this infrastructure from a production point of view already. So basically, if we all buy it on this podcast right now, that's great. We're already in the black, because there's really virtually no overhead for this kind of expansion, which is fantastic. When you're expanding, you want to avoid risk or take calculated risk whenever you can. I don't care what you're running, a McDonald's or anything else. That's what you want to do, so you don't expose yourself to financial issues. And so this is an opportunity where it really doesn't take a lot to be successful, and yet all the big production value is going to be there, pyro, big entrances, all that stuff. And this is going to be available in HD standard, and on our iPay-per-view stream, Somehow it's available in 3D. I don't even understand that, but it'll be also available in 3D, which is kind of trippy. So it's really, there's not a lot for this to be successful. And if you get it in HD, it's $29.95. If you get it in standard, it's $19.95. If you go for the $29 option, that's half of a UFC pay-per-view.
Right.
So it's real value. It's I believe. A little bit more affordable than even Ring of Honor, which I think is in the mid-30s for an HD pay-per-view. So we're trying to put it out there a price that people can say, hey, you know what, that's a decent value. I'm just going to just try it out, as opposed to saying, hey, let's try to go there and meet what the other companies are doing. I want to really let people have the least amount of excuses for not buying this, and give them a lot of bang for their buck. And that's what we're hoping out. That's what we're looking to do with this event.
And if you're not familiar with lucha, if there's a style of wrestling that you would want to watch in 3D, it's probably lucha libre. So
that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't even understand how that works, but I would love to see it in 3D.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just like the matches they're going to have. There's going to be trios matches. There's going to be 8-man matches. There's going to be a hair match with Alberto versus Brian Cage. One of those guys will lose their hair, either Alberto or Brian Cage. There's so much variety on this show, and it's really the WrestleMania of Lucha Libre. So it's their biggest show of the year. It's going to be packed. They're on track to sell out Ciudad Mexico. It's their big arena down there. So if they do sell out, I mean, that's the same arena for WWE fans. When they run Mexico City, they run this arena. It looks like a high-end arena from the States. I mean, it's beautiful.
So your role primarily is in producing the English language version of this. Is that?
Yeah, I'm an exec producer on this bad boy, and working with AAA just in terms of business development with their English language strategy. So that's a very vague term, and a lot falls under that umbrella, and I guess that's kind of how we like it. So,
but I mean, so you're also a broadcaster yourself too. You do the MLW shows with
right.
With Conan, so you have some insight into the booking, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
But you're not actually. But that you don't have the responsibility of it. You just get to sort of eavesdrop on it.
No. I've done promoting. I've done booking, and I enjoy not having to be a babysitter and have to come up with all the crazy ideas. If someone wants to bounce something off of me, cool. I'm glad to always be there to bounce it off of. But I really enjoy kind of being in my own lane and just go and pedal to the metal and let everyone go in their lane and do their thing. My appetite is full when it comes to all those things. I've had my time at that table, and I'd like to move on and try something else.
Cool. So what do you? I mean, well, one of the reasons I asked that is, and this may just be sort of your opinion on it more than anything else, but the three guys that you mentioned, the big WWE stars who's through different circumstances ended up in AAA over the last year. I mean, does AAA book them with that storyline in mind in sort of a reality era way? That seems like it's appealing to the Mexican market at least. I mean, that's been a big staple of sort of Patron's character since he left WWE, is that he's no longer being held down by racists, kind of a thing. I mean, does that factor in?
It's definitely a part of his journey. It's been well documented, and it's funny because I became friends with Alberto just last year. We didn't work together at WWE, but once he left, literally within days of leaving WWE, we got on the phone. Conan connected us, and we became really good friends. And he's a guy that has a lot of pride, a lot of dignity. And I think you need guys like that are their own advocates in wrestling, because a lot of times you need to say no, or you need to say, what if we were to try a little differently? And that's protecting your character, your storyline, and how you're represented on TV. And I think, unfortunately, right now there's a culture in WWE where they're not their own advocates to the extent they need to be. But again, their options beyond WWE are very limited. And so a guy says, "Listen, I don't have Mexico because I'm not a luchador. I'm not a second-generation star. So I kind of have to go along with what they give to me." And I look at Vince and I always tell talent, listen, you have to get to a certain point of stature where you can push back too. or you have to have a really great plan B. You have to have some sort of leverage, and he has to respect hearing your voice. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys don't get to that point where they can have that luxury with Vince, that kind of rapport with Vince. And it's that's one of the problems, I think, with why we see this almost as like you see guys like Dolph Ziggler kind of go around the block. It's like at the end of the day they might see some new scenery, but they always end up in the same place no matter what happens, which I think is sad.
Well, it's a bit like, my old man's a trucker, and, he drives a semi or whatever, and any company, you need, 2-3 years of experience just to get in the door, but that's every company. How do you get the experience unless you have that? So it's like you need to become a big enough star to push back when it's obviously a bad idea, but how do you become a big enough star when they're giving you those bad ideas, and doesn't respect that you're not, being more vocal about things.
Yeah, I mean, I always look at it like this. I mean, Undertaker came in with a big push, right? And he was pretty much just had to live up to expectations, but also he put in a lot of work and he earned it at the end of the day. He worked his ass off to be one of the most enduring characters that's ever been a part of WWE and their mythology. Then you look at guys that had to constantly struggle, elbow their way in, like CM Punk, constantly were getting pushed back. I was there when they were doing dark matches and saw him buried behind the scenes and get goofed on. He had to fight how they look at him versus how they look at a guy that's really jacked up and is their prototype. And it's amazing, those guys that elbow their way in and they get themselves over in spite of booking, and then they know when it's the right moment to push back. I think CM Punk was brilliant with how and when he did that. It's just sad that WWE wasn't able to maintain that relationship with him, and to this day he's not with the company. Instead, he's with UFC because I think a guy like that is he's a once in a generation type talent in that. He's authentic, like Brock Lesnar. He's not cast to be in a role. He doesn't work like he's out of some clone factory. He doesn't look like he's out of a clone factory. He's authentic, and that's what wrestling needs now more than ever.
He's a cook at the Waffle House. Is that what Nash said? It feels like we're It feels like we're in an era where there are no real stars anymore. I mean, is that fair to say? Where it's like you got your Cenas and whatever and whatnot, but now they're coming up on SummerSlam and it's Undertaker's back and he's the age he is, and it's Lesnar, and right. I mean, Lesnar's great and all, but he's been around for since 2002. Why do you think there's no? It seems like there's just no, and it doesn't feel like there's anyone coming up even. I mean, there are guys that we like or whatever, but no one's like transcendent. We don't have a Hogan or an Austin or a Rock that looks like they're ready to become something more. Why is that?
I think a lot of that has to do with just where you're getting your talent from and what else is out there. I look at a guy they could have done a lot more. I think Doc Gallows, Luke Gallows, who's now part of the Bullet Club in New Japan, he was like perfect, had big size, has incredible charisma. He should still be in the WWE system. Same with CM Punk. It's how you maintain guys, develop them, and manage them. Steve Austin wasn't Steve Austin day one when you saw him down in Dallas or in USWA. He went on a journey and he evolved over that time. And right now, you can see guys like Carl Anderson from New Japan. That's a guy that has made a career out of working in Japan, but he would have been amazing over here. But WWE has a certain look and a certain thing they look for, and it was funny actually talking to him. He actually no-showed a dark match. Once he got a call that he was booked full-time to do New Japan, he never even went to the dark match he was booked for in WWE. He had no desire to pursue it, having heard all the things that he had heard about the company, which I get. It's a great place when things go your way. When they don't go your way, and I think you look at WWE, and just to use a baseball metaphor, they're a power hitter. They strike out a lot creatively, but when they connect, they hit it out of the park. And I think we've all seen that too, just to balance the conversation about being critical. They can really deliver. It's just continuity and being consistent, and those are two things they really struggle with.
Do you, I mean, do you think that as more people know what it's like behind the scenes there, and as players like AAA and New Japan get more prominent in the way the market is, I mean, a whole bunch of factors. Could you see the next Stone Cold or the next The Rock being a star for a different company other than WWE?
Yeah, and I think it's a weird thing. We're in a funky time. Like we can have access instantaneously to New Japan's streaming service, where they air every house show, every G1 match on New Japan World. It's like $8 for a month subscription. Now you have access to AAA. There's an English website, aaalucha.com. They have a Twitter feed, AAA Lucha on Twitter, and they're on Facebook. So now you have access to the top Mexican promotion and the top Japanese promotions within a few clicks. So you can get now AAA on American pay-per-view and in Canada and worldwide on iPay-per-view with their major shows, with English commentary from Matt Stryker and Hugo. And so it's a different time. It's a different era where I think there are viable options for fans. It's a great time. You have things like Lucha Underground. There's Ring of Honor. There's a ton of programming out there if you want an alternative. Now, will we get to a point where some of these American companies can afford some of the higher-end talent like Rey Mysterio or Alberto or their versions of that when they hit the free agent market? We'll see. But it's almost like we're going to this kind of hybrid old-school territory where there's these companies that they either tour in the East Coast or they have their pocket, and they run regularly, and you can make an okay living if you balance that with international dates. Look at the Young Bucks as an example.
Right.
So it's almost like we're entering this new age where it's a quasi-territory kind of thing that's happening. There's viable options. But it's a little bit different than the territories at the same time. The WWE it's so hard to be you can't beat WWE at being WWE, but you can definitely carve out a living working for another organization and have a good quality of life. New Japan, look at AJ Styles, great example there, and AAA, they brought in 3 WWE acts, and so I think that there's definitely options out there, and I hope companies like Impact or TNA, depending on what week it is, what they want to call themselves, I hope that they can survive and live to fight another day. Right? But I don't know. Is it TNA or Impact Wrestling? The site's Impact Wrestling. I don't know what's going on over there.
I don't think they know.
I don't think anyone.
Oh my God.
Well, I know we got to take it home. Geno, do you have any? I mean, I got a couple quick ones, but do you have anything else you wanted to touch on, General Boss Man?
Well, I guess I'm wondering with NXT and what we've seen with it coming up, and then there are a lot of talk about backstage goings on with WWE maybe working with outside promotions, talent exchanges, things like that. Is that something you think we could see other promotions, other companies working with WWE, even if it's just on the level where talent? They could do talent exchanges with NXT or even something with AAA? Or is that just not? I think those just rumors?
Well, from my time with Vince, the reality is this: he will tell you that he does not play well with others. History will tell you that is true. The reality is, I think Hunter would like to pursue those kind of endeavors because I think they are. There's a lot of upside to them, and I think Jushin Liger working NXT is intriguing. Is that going to lead to some sort of collaboration similar to WCW and New Japan of the 90s, where you had young guys go to Japan, young Japanese wrestlers come to the States, and they both get seasoning in unique environments, then come back with a little bit more sizzle and experience and confidence? It's possible. I don't know if WWE will ever do that outright until maybe there's an outright regime change. There's a lot of advantages to that, though. They did have something similar with a satellite affiliation with Memphis in the 90s, and they had that with Puerto Rico with Victor Quiones in the 90s, and they had a similar thing in the early 2000s with the UPW promotion that's now defunct out in LA. It's logical to have these kind of affiliations, and I think it would streamline the awkwardness of waiting for some of these promotions have contracts for their talent, so you have to wait for the contract to expire. Whereas if you have some sort of built-in relationship, maybe there is a way to kill a contract, and then they're getting some sort of money, almost like a baseball trade. In lieu of talent, you get money, and sometimes maybe they could send some of their guys that need to be reimagined down to another company. Zack Ryder goes to AAA, or Wrestler X goes to Japan. And then come back with a different look, a different vibe, and all that stuff, and you're putting them to work, and they're not sitting at home. So ECW and WWE did this in the 90s. They sent Al Snow down, they sent other talent down, and Brockus, who was a complete bust by WWF, but was a big jacked up guy from Germany. I think there's a lot of advantages to doing this, and I think it would help. It would actually validate a lot of the smaller companies, say like Evolve or Ring of Honor, to have that connection. It's a pipeline, and it helps them recruit talent because, hey, listen, we're going to do something special with you, and when we're done, hey, you never know, WWE might come calling. So it's like for talent, it's like, yeah, I'll work for you for a little less, knowing that down the road I might get a look from WWE. So it's a win-win situation if and when that would happen. But like I said at the top, Vince does not play well with others, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I can see why maybe WWE, Raw, SmackDown, why maybe they wouldn't want to do that. But I just think, like you're talking about with NXT, it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely, absolutely.
Sean?
Oh, I mean, I was just going to say, just like I said, I mean, well, thank you for the time, and maybe we could do this again after the show, and we can get some thoughts on how it went, and we can pick your brain about some other stuff. But I just wanted to ask you along these lines. I mean, when we get all these Cagesiders to pay their $30 for the HD version next Sunday, who's the star? Who's going to impress them the most, or who's your sleeper? What's your sleeper matchup of the card, other than those big guys that we spend so much time talking about?
Okay, the match that I'm really hyped for, that I'm really excited for, if I had to pick one, it's the Trios match. It's a three-way with Pentagon Jr., who looks like a zombie ninja, Hijo del Fantasma, and El Tejano Jr. They're going against Jack Evans and Helico and Fenix against the champions, Los Hell Brothers. It's for the title, and there's going to be a lot of action. It's going to be hard to keep up. They're going to probably break gravity during that match. You're going to see just about every type of 720, 1080, whatever you want to see a guy do it, they're going to do it in this match. It's going to be all over the place. I mean, it's going to be legendary. And like I said, we're going to drop a special at AAAlucha.com, AAAlucha.com this Sunday, where you're going to get to see a little sampling of these dudes doing their thing, and you're going to really be impressed, I think, not just by this match, but all the other guys. And just like, if you're a fan of WWE, you're a fan of a big show feel, the pageantry, the spectacle, and there's going to be a lot of that injected into TripleMania. So you're going to get that on top of great matches, innovation, and it's really cool. I think for most fans, I think some of those things that appeal to wrestling for us are always finding the next big thing, the next big star, and watch them because they're a fresh new guy that intrigues us and captures our imagination. And the AAA roster is full of those kind of guys from the top to the bottom. There's a lot of great talent that you've never seen before. Some guys are veterans, some guys are rookies, but you've never seen them, and they're doing their thing. And it's really a different, cool, innovative style, and it's a real cutting edge product.
Excellent. I'm pumped. I was pumped before, but I'm even more pumped now. Geno, are you pumped?
I'm pumped, man. I'm really excited.
And Geno's our WWE-centric guy, so if you've got the General excited, that's a good sign.
All right.
I have to go where the money is, and if there's money in it, we'll do it.
There you go. Well, we're going to be covering it on Cageside, so stay there. Again, it's AAAlucha.com, and I'll put that in the text beneath this video that you're watching here. And again, Court, thank you very much, and hopefully we can do it again.
Definitely. Hey, guys, thank you so much. I'd love to come back.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Peace.